The district attorney said to me, "Is there any question in your mind that this is the man who assaulted you?" And my response was, "There's absolutely no question in my mind." Why didn't an alarm bell go off? This was in Manitowoc, taken right before our 20th class reunion. So that would have been 1987, 2 years after the attack. It was a weekday. Oftentimes in the summer, our 2 children and my husband and I would go to Two Rivers, Wisconsin, and spend the late afternoon on the beach. I often jogged on that beach. This day was no different. It was a beautiful day. It was probably in the high 70s. I jogged north into Point Beach State Park. Probably had jogged maybe a third of a mile, and there was a man standing with a leather jacket slung over his shoulder. He hollered to me, "Hey, it's a great day." I turned and glanced at him and said, "Yeah, it's a great day for a jog." And I jogged north for about 3 miles. It looks so totally different now that I would have a hard time pinpointing exactly where the spot was that he grabbed me. He grabbed me from behind and said to me, "We're going to go for a little walk up into the sand dunes." It was a fairly deserted area of the beach. There wasn't anyone visible. 2 thoughts went instantly through my mind. I need to stay calm. I need to get a really good look at this guy, because if I survive this, I want to be able to identify him. He was kneeling over me, telling me to spread my legs. And the more I refused, the more frustrated he became. And he tightened his grip and said, "Do what I tell you, I've got a knife." I didn't see the knife, but when he told me, "I've got a knife," I focused on his jacket. I'm thinking, he must have it hidden. It must be in one of his pockets. He would strangle me until I would about lose consciousness. Then he would loosen his grip and say, "Now are you going to do it?" I would refuse, and then he would repeat the strangulation. With his hands around my neck, he started shaking my upper body fairly violently. Then he started beating me about the face. I distinctly remember 3 thoughts. That our son had hopped on his bike that morning, and I hadn't kissed him goodbye and told him I loved him, and I would never have that chance again. That our daughter was with us at the beach, and her last vision would be of my dead, strangled body lying naked in the sand. And my 3rd thought was that now my husband was going to have to raise 2 young children on his own. Eventually, he strangled me until I lost consciousness. When I came to, I sat up I looked at my hands and they were covered with blood. I'm thinking, he could have left on a trail through the woods. Maybe he's in the woods waiting to see if he in fact killed me. I need to get out of here. I need to get to safety. The first person who questioned me in the emergency room was a female deputy from the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. She asked me to give a physical description of my assailant. I said that he had scraggly beard and mustache. His hair was frizzy from the humidity and sort of blended with the texture of his beard. I described it either as sandy blonde or dirty blonde hair. Brown eyes, about 5'6" to 5 feet 8 inches tall. Short stubby fingers, very strong hands, wearing a brown t-shirt, Caucasian male. I said to the sheriff, "Do you have a suspect in mind?" And he answered yes. He put 9 photos in 3 groups of 3 on my bedside table, asked me to look carefully at the photos to determine whether or not my assailant was among them. Eventually, I picked up Stephen Avery's photo and handed it to the sheriff, and I said, "This is the guy." He put together a live lineup to make sure that we have the right person in custody. And I start at number 1, and I'm looking carefully at each one. And when I came to number 6, I felt the color drain from my face, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I marked on the piece of paper, number 6, folded in half, and gave it to the sheriff. The verdict came in the middle of the afternoon. When the jury filed in, I felt like you could hear my heartbeat across the entire courtroom. I was so nervous. Steve had been charged with attempted first-degree murder, first-degree sexual assault, and false imprisonment. As the verdict was read, he was found guilty on all 3 counts. Steve went through a number of appeals, maintaining he was innocent. All his appeals were turned down. In 2001, one of his appellate attorneys contacted the Wisconsin Innocence Project. There were a number of hairs that had been recovered when I was taken to the hospital. His motion was to have those hairs tested for DNA. I'm like, I know the right guy's in prison. Let's get this over with. It took from April of 2001 until September of 2003 for the DNA to be tested and the results to come back. I get a phone call. I had identified the wrong person. Stephen Avery was not my assailant. It's still pretty fresh, remembering what that felt like. It was much harder than the day I was assaulted. The day I was assaulted, I felt like there was something I could do about it. I could fight back. I can't unring the spell. I can't give Steve back the 18+ years that he lost. My assailant was, in fact, a man named Gregory Allen. Gregory Allen was free from 1985 until 1995. He was a suspect in between 8 and 10 sexual assaults in those ensuing years. So I had to ask myself, how many other women have had their lives turned inside out and upside down? because the wrong person went to prison for my assault, and I played a role in that misidentification. I was following the railroad track across town, and I don't think I really wanted a train to come. I just felt like, oh my God, I don't deserve to live. I have played a role in a horrific, horrific miscarriage of justice. The next week, I saw a picture of Gregory Allen. I looked at that picture and I would have sworn I have never seen this guy in my life. I was having difficulty sleeping, a lot of nightmares. And I always saw Stephen Avery in those nightmares and in those flashbacks. It was his face that I saw. He was the only suspect who was in both the photo array and the live lineup. Once I made that identification, he in fact became my assailant. You can't go back and decontaminate.